Conversations with Garmamie. I'm joined by professional MMA fighter Jeff Chan, who fights out of One Championship. How you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to interview you because I find, first of all, you obviously run a very successful online brand called MMAShredded for most people who obviously most likely have found your content. It's all over on all platforms from YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. And what am I missing? YouTube, Facebook, TikTok.
Instagram.
And Instagram, of course, yes. So make sure you find the MMA Shredded and you follow, like, etc. MMA Shredded, of course, is MMA tutorials, breakdowns, fighters workouts, drills, strength and conditioning, and intense sparring. It's a whole community where essentially you break down training, break down fighting, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You have an interesting overall followership of almost 700,000 followers. That's across all four social media platforms. First question I wanted to ask you, Jeff, is one of your first videos was a back in 2016 was a street fight challenge, right?
Yeah.
That was your first one. And a month later, you had another one, which happens to be your most popular one in regards to 8 simple and effective takedowns. First question I want to ask you is, what do you think has attributed to the success of MMAShredded, the brand?
I wouldn't say it's due to those two videos. I would say what made me stand out from all the other channels is that I include my sparring footage to back up anything I teach. Actually, that 8 simple takedowns video was demonstrated only with a partner with no resistance. But now, actually, with all my videos, whatever I teach, there's always real-time sparring to back it up. So like now I'm a true believer in teaching only what I can actually pull off. So, if I just learned a new move and I can't land it in sparring yet, I won't teach it. So now I literally base off my teachings only on what I can do in sparring. And because of that, I think people see how genuine it is, and they have a different perspective and view of learning because they see me landing in real time and in a real speed versus slow demonstration. I also include my failed attempts, which I feel like a lot of beginners are missing. You know, including myself. I remember, even sometimes now I'll go on YouTube and I'll search up like a jujitsu submission, and then you'll see the instructor on the channel demonstrate it with no resistance, and I'm like, oh, that's such a cool move. And then it's in my head, and I go and I try it into sparring or jujitsu rolling, and it doesn't work at all. you know. But then when you see someone trying it with resistance, then you're like, you understand a little bit better um, how it should be applied.
There's a real transparency with the work you're doing. I think people can see that. As you mentioned, you show your successes, your fails in terms of when you're fighting, and it's fascinating for learners at all levels, be it beginners or advanced competitors like yourself, because you're open and honest about that. And I think that will resonate with any potential end user or viewer, because we don't always see that side of the reality of combat sports or life or any activity that's competitive, right? People only want to show the victory, the win, the home run, whatever sport, whatever it is. But just going back to that first point, I was just giving an example of, I went on YouTube and I looked at your oldest video, just to, in terms of looking as in terms of the storytelling of how it first started in terms of a look and feel to what it is now. And obviously it's progressed tremendously in terms of quality. And I understand that that's all you, right? That's you doing the post-production and the editing. And then I also looked at the most popular video in terms of views on particularly YouTube. And when I saw that it was takedowns, in a way, I wasn't surprised, because there's so much interesting content online regarding that topic of takedowns from various different combat sports, and your sport in particular. You do mixed martial arts, but you've also fought Muay Thai as well. Moving on to the second question now. Looking back now, you've only been doing this for 4 years, and you've really been able to scale quite the volume of content, develop and cultivate quite a following, and convert end users, which is remarkable for any business, quite frankly. When you first started, did you think you were going to be able to attain this level of reach and this global audience?
I did not think so at all. Actually, when I first started, I never would have expected myself to start a YouTube channel. Um, when I first started, my main goal was to get into law enforcement, and training was just has always been a hobby of mine. And I guess I want to vlog my journey as a martial artist, which would start with tutorials, and anything that I would learn, I would try to, once I perfected it, I would then make a tutorial of it. And as I continued to make content, I started to come up with different ideas. Um, I would try them in sparring, and then I would start filming it. And then that's what gave me the idea of teaching only what I can actually pull off in sparring.
Initially, when you first started dabbling into this venture, what were your friends, family, fellow training partners? Well, what did they think of the brand?
Um, I I mean, nobody directly did not support me. Like, I think everyone supported me. Um, when I started filming my sparring sessions, I think I got a few weird awkwardness. Like, oh, he's filming again. What is he doing? I didn't notice it, but my actually my fiance, who started filming for me, was the one who noticed it. But I don't know. Yeah.
Now, it's interesting because in terms of noticing with a lot of this content, it's all about the analytics at the end of the day, right? You can drill down as far as understanding your audience, getting a return on investment, knowing what worked and what didn't. Generally speaking, by looking at the analytics. If you don't mind, what's the most interesting fact about your audience? I'm sure you look at the data and the stats. What would you say is the most interesting fact for you?
The most interesting fact.
In terms of insights and stats, like when you produce a video, you put it out, you publish it on these platforms, and then you look at the
Okay,
stats.
I got a good one actually. What's interesting is people like to see me get hit. Because at first, when I started posting my sparring, it would be a lot of me winning. And it's not that I would take out the parts where I got hit. I always left the parts where I got hit as well. But at the time when I started filming my sparring, most of the students there, just to be honest, weren't at my level. So I would kind of dominate every sparring partner. And then as I started to travel and film my sparring around other gyms, I started to come across higher level students who would beat me up. And then people like, oh, this is interesting. Like Jeff's getting his butt kicked, and people enjoyed that. And now I try to only put up sparring sessions of me going against someone who's more skilled than me or at my level. And I'll still film sessions of me going against guys that are not at my level, but I'll only add those clips for a tutorial, but I won't use it as a sparring vlog. So the way I create content is I'll have sparring vlogs where it's just my daily training sessions. And then I'll have tutorials, for example, 5 low kick combinations. And then I'll have, maybe 10 clips of me landing that specific low kick combination and add it to the tutorial.
What sort of feedback are you getting from end users and followers and fellow practitioners of these sports?
I would say the biggest thing would be motivation. People watch my videos for motivation. They watch my videos to learn new techniques. They watch my videos because they like me. And, well, I get a lot of amateur fighters telling me like, "Oh, I won my fight because I've been watching your videos, and every time I watch your sparring videos, I learn something new. I learned this little trick that you did," and that's what motivates me to continue doing what I do.
It's interesting because you add value with a lot of narration where you know what I mean, you go back in the video and you assess and provide, you break it down for learners, which is integral, I guess, and for fight fans as a whole, for commentators, you name it. I think it's all there, and for even your competitors who are
Yeah.
trying to profile you in terms of what you would do in certain scenarios. I know you've probably been asked this question many a times. you're very transparent with producing this sort of content. Do you ever think it might work against you?
I do believe it does work against me. Um, I definitely believe it's a disadvantage, but at the same time, I try to believe at least that, even if I didn't have all this content, if you watch any of my previous fights, my opponent could probably still be able to tell what my fighting style is. And just like what Conor McGregor is going to throw, his left hand, what George St. Pierre is going to do, his takedown, Khabib, his cage takedowns, we all know what they're going to do. But when you're in the ring, the timing, the speed, facing that specific opponent is just different. So I'd like to believe that although people may know my favorite moves, when we're in the ring there, the timing's different and I'll still be able to catch them.
Now, you have obviously a global audience. I'm curious to know which part of the world, I'm sure when you look at the analytics and the stats, which country surprised you the most in terms of viewers, location, and consumption of this content?
I wouldn't say anything surprised me, but there are a lot of people in the United States, a lot in India. Um, Honestly, at this point, I think I have an audience everywhere, everywhere
Wow.
around the world. Yeah,
Interesting. And tell us, where have you been? I know that you've traveled all over. Could you give us an idea of where you've been as far as traveling for MMA Shredded?
I've primarily traveled in Asia. So it started in Thailand, and I remember this was just a year and a half ago, where I did a 4-month trip. I went to Thailand, to Malaysia, to Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, then Bali. And my goal was to try to visit as many gyms as I could. So I think I hit like 17 gyms there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. And like there's thousands of combat sports athletes of different disciplines, being amateur or pro, right? And at the end of the day, like there's for some they have third party agencies who take care of their online presence. But correct me if I'm wrong, you're doing this all by yourself, more or less, with help from.
So I started this myself, but I actually have my fiance backing me up. So she helps me with the business end of things. She takes care of everything actually.
Right.
I'm the content creator. I come up with the ideas, but she helps me with basically everything else, including filming.
Interesting.
Yeah, I
So
used to set up a tripod from across the room, and the angle would be like off, and I'd have to like zoom in, which increases the quality. But now I have my fiance who actually holds a stabilizer, and she does a great job at it.
that's fascinating, and having that collaboration there in terms of the content creator and the business strategist, post and production person, two people doing all that is fascinating. Would you say, or actually, how has this digital approach in terms of pushing the MMA shredded brand, how has it impacted your profile as a fighter in this very competitive, media hungry sphere?
It definitely got me signed with one championship, to be quite honest, and people want to see me fight. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are really skilled, but people just don't care if they fight or not, or care about watching them fight. Those guys may be better than me, but people want to watch me fight just simply because they're interested in me and they've seen me through my social media platforms.
Yeah, I mean, you've cultivated that audience and that brand. I think that's a real value for any organization who wants to build up their viewership. And a lot of the times, I think having someone with that social media approach and that digital approach is a real win-win, because that's a pressure on fighters. I would imagine. I'm saying that as a fan, it's an additional pressure if they're not accessible to media, if they don't produce their own content, if they're not engaging, it can work. It can certainly work against them. And we're going to slightly move over to the topic of combat sports as far as you as a fighter, in terms of how would you describe yourself as a fighter? And follow up with that would be, why do you fight and compete? What's the motivation?
I actually don't consider myself a fighter. I consider
Wow.
myself a full-time martial artist.
Okay.
I train because I love to train. So if I don't have a fight coming up, which I don't, I'm still training every day. I love the training part. I hate the actual fighting part. Like I hate cutting weight. I hate being in fight camp, but I love training. And I'm always trying to be the best version of myself. And the great thing about just training to be a martial artist is that I'm always trying new things. And I don't really care if I'm getting tagged in sparring or if I'm losing or making a fool of myself. Like I'm just having fun and trying new things. Whereas when you're in fight camp, you're focused on things that you're already good at and you're pushing the cardio till you're dead.
A really interesting answer there in terms of you don't consider yourself a fighter. You say you consider yourself a full-time martial artist.
Yes. I
Please,
mean,
please elaborate and on that and give us what's how would you differentiate between the both?
um, if you think about it, I turned pro in 2012 and it's going to be 2021 soon, and I've only had 5 pro fights, and I've had a decent amount of amateur fights, but when it comes to pro fights from 2012 to now, I've only had 5 pro fights, which tells you that like I'm not hungry for fighting. I'm not constantly fighting. I'm constantly training, and if the opportunity pops up to fight, then I'll take it. So I compete, to answer your question earlier, is because I do want to challenge myself, but I have other priorities. For example, right now I have my business as a priority. So if something comes up for a fight and I'm busy doing something for MMAShredded, well, I'm going to choose my business over that. For example, I was offered a fight, but I was hosting a camp in Thailand at the time. So obviously I choose teaching and hosting my camp over fighting.
That sounds like you have a lot of business acumen and you're thinking about your brand, and in the long run you're really looking at the bigger picture, which is I think which is awesome. Quite frankly, I don't know, you would be able to tell me actually what's the current I know we're generalizing here when I ask this, but do most fighters think about uh, the business side of things and even longevity, or their lives past their competition lives?
From the people that I've met and communicated with, I don't think they think past that. I don't think they think longevity. Like me, on the other hand, I'm thinking I'd like to spar when I'm 50. Not sparring hard, but I'd like to be sparring. Actually, I've toned it down a bit now. I try not to spar hard, especially to the head. Hard to the body is fine, but light to the head, I like to pull the punches and just try to be technical because I do want to continue training for the rest of my life. And I don't think a lot of fighters think past their competition days, and I guess they are just banking on making it big. Whereas for me, on the other hand, I just want to be my best version. I don't think I'm the best. I don't think I can even be the best. Like there's always going to be someone younger, more hungry, you know, better genetics who's going to be better than me. I can only get as good as I feel like I can. But to compare myself to everyone else, it's too hard to do that.
Man, it's funny. I'm listening to you say this, and I'm thinking, I'm like, you also potentially have other adjacent business opportunities in terms of even facilitating services for fighters, in terms of exploring their own online brand. For those who are not social media savvy, how to augment their presence online, how to look at communication strategy, digital strategy, what I'm saying, like there's an entire ecosystem there potentially within your own community for even other ways to leverage that and convert and monetize. But we'll get into the topic of not sparring as hard. I find, because of potential trauma to the head, which is an important topic. We'll get into that in a bit. I know you've somewhat answered this, but I'll still ask you again, in terms of goals in combat sports, what do you hope to attain?
For me, I'm honestly taking one fight at a time. I don't have ambitions to make it to the UFC because that's the most common question I get asked. Um, for me, again, it's just one fight at a time and challenging myself. But my main priority is again the business, and yeah.
Where does the focus on the business, where does that stem from? Was it something that was it innate? Was it something that you always thought of, or was it a scenario where you just, I know this word gets used a lot now, particularly during COVID-19, but pivoted? Did you pivot into the business thinking because of what's the context there, if you don't mind me asking?
So I actually started this channel when I met another YouTuber. His name is Sean Fagan, and he is the guy who actually inspired me to start the channel. So he does the same thing, but in Muay Thai, and he motivated and inspired me to start my own channel. And I saw that he could uh, make a living doing what he loved doing. I thought maybe I could too. But when he motivated me to start my channel, I didn't quite believe I was capable of making a living out of it. And I started as just a hobby, as a way to vlog my training. My main goal was still law enforcement. So I actually started the YouTube channel and I put half my heart into it, to be honest, and was focused on getting into law enforcement. And something actually, something very tragic happened in my life 2 years ago, and I lost my job. And that's actually what pivoted me to put my whole commitment into MMA Shredded. I was actually forced to because I lost my job and I had nothing else.
Wow.
And the only other thing I had left, and the only other thing that I was good at was martial arts. Um, so yeah, if that, I think that answers your question.
It does. And I mean, in terms of, you know, transitioning from that, you mentioned the UFC. You're fighting for one championship, which is equally it's a global combat sports brand. In terms of reach, it's actually bigger than the UFC. People maybe in North America might not realize that one championship has a bigger global reach in terms of that audience, which is a massive one in Asia, all the way to Central Asia, down to India, where we're talking much bigger audience than the UFC. And for them to have you on as a fighter, of course, in their company, in my mind, I see as a win-win, both in terms of hey, we've got a great lifelong martial artist who wants to compete, but also we have someone who's a media personality, a social media personality. That's how I'm assessing the situation. How was your experience? I know you fought once at the one championship. I believe it was last February. Yeah. How has the experience been fighting at possibly the biggest MMA league in the world?
Everything ran very smoothly. They're very organized. I really enjoyed the whole process. Being in Singapore, it was my first time, fighting overseas like that. Couldn't ask for anything different.
How would you compare now in terms of from what you know of different brands? Because we know the UFC, we know one championship. There's a slew of other mixed martial arts competition brands, leagues, whatever you want to call them, in different parts of the world. How would you compare what's special to you about one championship versus in comparison to maybe the UFC and other ones?
I think they do things the best way in the sense that we are not allowed to cut any water for the fights. Um, so in other organizations, the weight class for bantamweight is 135 on the dot or 135.6. With one championship, the weight class for bantamweight is 135 to 145. So normally, my walk around weight is 152. Normally, or before one championship, I would diet down to 142, 143, and then cut 6 pounds of water and feel like absolute shit. With one championship, I would diet to 145, no water, that's it. So not only do I have to diet less, I don't have to cut water. And I feel like it's a much healthier process. and I think all organizations should do it that way. Another thing I like about One Championship is that they don't expect their fighters. In fact, they encourage their fighters to be very respectful. Whereas me, I'm not the greatest trash talker, so um, I think One Championship fits me in that category.
Do you even think one needs to be a trash talker to be competing at the grander stage as far as mixed
I
martial
don't I don't think so, but I definitely think that UFC really promotes that and it really hypes up the fans. But I don't think One Championship needs it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm a fan of both brands, but there's a big major distinction between both of them. And correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, the UFC is sports entertainment, and the focus there, of course, is mixed martial arts from the scope of entertaining the fans and hyping things up in the way we like it in North America. And One Championship, I think, tends to focus more on the core elements and values of martial arts beyond just the fight, in terms of principles and values and ethics. And there's been enough literature written, articles about that. I think the One Championship ingrains that in their messaging, and they're targeting, I think, completely different audiences. And I think there's a lot more. I think in a way it's a tougher audience there, because it's so broad, from when you talk about the Indian, the Indian audience to maybe the Northeast Asian audience from Japan. You know what I mean? It's such
Yep.
an interesting, how do you communicate and market this brand, and they're doing an outstanding job. And it's funny because you can tell, as a fan, you can tell the difference. At the end of the day, it's still quality combat sports on both sides. I'm not taking anything away from the fighters, but the way they conduct themselves as personalities, and superstars to fans, I think it's evident that there's a distinction there. On that topic, like, you being a lifelong martial artist, I'm not going to call you, you don't want to be called a pro fighter. I get that. How do you manage wearing both hats of being a content creator, a successful content creator, and a successful lifelong competitor now, fighting at the grandest stage here?
To be honest, it's tough. If I'm in fight camp, I'm not really creating content, and that's the truth. And that's why I haven't been fighting, or that's why I don't fight as much as other fighters, because I like just being a martial artist. But at the same time, um, I made my One Championship debut because I didn't want to regret it. Um, my fiance is actually very against me fighting. So
Well,
funny story is I promised her that I would never fight again after my last two fights, and she almost broke up with me because I didn't commit to that.
wow.
Yeah, and then I'm like, okay. After my last two fights, I'm like, okay, I won. I'm not going to fight again. I'm satisfied, and like I promised her. And then like 3 months later, One Championship reached out to me, and like when I spoke to them, I didn't even give him an answer until like 2 weeks later because I was so scared of telling my fiance that I want to take it. But obviously, she understands that it is a lifetime opportunity, and I decided I would, take one fight at a time and see where it goes.
Interesting. And as far as I know, before you mentioned how you changed your approach to sparring, I guess the question is, how do you ensure you remain injury free? Because the volume of content that you're producing, and you train every day, you happen to remain active, maybe not on the competition end, but you're in the gym, you're continuously training all over the place. How do you remain injury free?
Um, I would say training with the right or sparring with the right training partners. For example, um, when I was training overseas, I would say it was pretty risky. I was going against guys, like I was sparring with the competitors there, and they saw the camera and they're like, "Who's this guy?" And some guys tried to knock my head off. Like if you watch my vlog at AKA Thailand, uh, at my what was the gym called, Team Posse in Korea. And those guys tried to tear my head off. And it's funny because I actually told the coach before sparring that I'm like, hey, I'm not here to challenge anyone. I'm here to just vlog my training, have a good time, showcase your fighters. It's good exposure for you guys. And then he spoke in Korean to his team. And then like the first guy I sparred with tried to kill me.
Wow.
But anyways, it's more risky when I travel the world, but then that's where the good content is, you know. But I'm not always traveling. On the other hand, when I'm training with people at the current gym that I train at, I know who I can spar with without getting injured. For example, Fred Stonehouse, he is super, super skilled, and we respect each other so much. We can go really, really intense, but we pull the punches back. So the intensity is as if we're fighting. We get tired as if we're fighting because we're hitting so fast, and hard, but we pull the punches. And I just don't ever have to worry about getting hit by him and getting CTE. Like Fred literally could have landed over 50 clean head kicks on me, but he would pull it back at the last second. And you can see on the video, it's like a centimeter away from my head, and that's how precise and accurate he is.
Interesting. And I saw one of your videos, one of your many videos actually. You fight all sorts of the different competitors and athletes. And one I saw was against Ottawa's own Stéphane Lamarche. And I gotta say, I'm watching this video, and I for the record, I am a fan of Stéphane Lamarche. When you see him compete, he's intense, and you could tell he gives 300%. And I'm watching this video, and I'm like, are these guys sparring, or is Stefan trying to literally kill you in there at one point? And I say that respectfully. I'm obviously not a fighter. I'm a fan, but having seen him fight a few times, I sometimes I wonder if there's a sparring Stefan Lamarche versus a fighting Stefan Lamarche, because he's always
Turned on, yeah.
he's always on. And it's at one point, I think, in the clip I saw, I think he was attacking the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like at least 4 hits. And I'm like, good God, how are you standing? And anyways, I love the content, and just wanted to just follow up in terms of training. What would you say over the last 4 years, your game, just like your video production skills, your marketing skills, everything's evolved, everything has refined itself and improved into better content and obviously a better, smarter fighter. What would you say, what aspect of your overall game has improved the most?
I would say my evasive style and my footwork. I used to be very Muay Thai K1 style, tall stance, high guard, and kind of just eat punches. And when I say eat punches, I'm blocking and shelling, but you're still taking impact to the head. And I decided, I didn't just decide, but after watching, like I'm the type to watch fighters and kind of take a bit and add it to my arsenal. For example, I would take like Jose Aldo's low kicks, Dominic Cruz's footwork, TJ Dillashaw's head movement, Lyoto Machida's blitz attacks, Wonder Boy's low hands, Robert Whitaker's low hands, and now I've adapted more of an evasive style. Actually, people who don't know me and watch me spar, they think that I have a karate background, but I've never trained background or karate in my life. But it's because I kind of just watch and take. And then I learned so much from watching my own sparring that I'm able to kind of critique and learn on my own.
As far as your grappling within as it applies to mixed martial arts, how would you describe your grappling?
I think it's gone a lot better, especially since I turned pro as a white belt.
Oh wow!
I shouldn't have done that, but now I'm a brown belt, so I'm much more confident with my grappling.
Right on. And I know I by the way, big shout outs to Mark Holtz for making this interview happen. So thank you very much, Mark. And I know that he's training a lot in judo. He's a lifelong martial artist, just like yourself. What are your opinions on his focus in terms of training judo for judo? Well, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I actually watched your interview with him. It was a great podcast, and I love Mark, and he's so accomplished, and super proud to have him as my coach. Um, I like that he's trying to achieve a black belt in judo. He got his black belt in jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He is a black belt in Muay Thai, and yeah, I like what he's trying to do.
As someone who's been pursuing this, I think you've been competing since you were 15, right?
I started when I was 15, but I had my first fight around 18.
Okay, so so you started training when you were 15.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and I believe you're 20, 28, 29.
29, yes.
So you're essentially 15 years, 14 years into this adventure. And as someone who's had the opportunity to travel the world, to do what you love and to share your passion with audiences all over the world, what do you take? What keeps you motivated to doing this beyond the fact that you've been able to have so much creative momentum and to live this sort of style, like what keeps you going?
I would say my audience. Um, every day I'll get 5 to 10 new messages, and I'm the type to respond to every message, and I read every message, and I constantly get messages saying, "Hey, your video helped me win my fight," or "I watch your videos to motivate me to go sparring," or I haven't, I gave up on training, and I came across your video, watched it, and now I want to get back into training. So the truth is, I motivate and inspire a lot of people, and it's a very rewarding feeling. And that's why I like coaching over fighting. I love coaching. I love teaching, and I love coaching people who love to learn, who want to learn. And when I'm doing a private and that student is like super pumped about it, I love it. It's such a great feeling. It's like the same high as when you win a fight. Not exactly, but it's a rewarding feeling.
What do you look for in what is the ideal student in your opinion, as someone who's been involved in this from both the learning aspect, obviously the continuous learning that you're doing? What is the ideal student? How would you describe them, their characteristics?
Um, just someone very open-minded and willing to learn, someone who is inspired by what I do and my style of teaching.
Now, if you could go back in time to when you first started at the age of 15, as far as training, what advice would you give your 15-year-old self? Sorry, I know it's a tough question, but and I'll tell you why I ask. I'll tell
Okay.
you why I ask. So you're training every day, you're getting better every day, you're documenting a lot of what you're learning, and you're sharing that with others. And from there, your
I have an
circle
answer
of
now.
pardon?
I have an answer now.
Okay, perfect.
If I was 15, I wish I filmed my footage back when I was 15. I wish I filmed from 15 to 25 because I missed 10 years of progress. And I'm the type to I like to collect boxing gloves. I like to collect things, and my YouTube channel is a blog, a journey, but it's also a collection of my training. Every different gym I've trained at is a collection. Every different country I've visited is a collection. Every sparring session is a collection. And people who have watched, who have been following me for a long time, they let me know. They're like, "Oh, I love to see you progress from 2 years ago till now." And yeah,
Who would you say in your world travels and your training, who has been the most who have you learned from the most?
from training,
Yeah.
crew Jeff Harrison was my first coach. Mark Holz, Nick Castiglia, they're still my coaches. I would say I learned the most from them. And crew Devin Henry also has. He's the one who shaped my style into an evasive style. He's the one who taught me like you don't need to, now that you're in MMA, you don't need to hit your hardest in every strike. You can kind of just pop those punches. You don't have to hit your hardest to do damage with those little MMA gloves. And yeah, I would say those four guys have influenced me most. and taught me the most. And
Now,
the rest is just from self-training and watching videos online.
now I think you recently did a video with him, right?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
In
And
my
I
backyard.
just, pardon me?
In my backyard, yeah.
Right. And I was wondering about the backyard thing, which, by the way, I think is awesome. Do the neighbors ever wonder what the hell's going on?
Probably, probably. No one bothers us. No one has bothered us, but
Oh,
I have no idea what they think.
oh. That's awesome because I was wondering. I'm like, I saw this one video where you were fighting. It was 2-on-1, right? And I'm like, oh man, these neighbors, like they're either like entertained, they're like, you know what I mean? Like they're watching this from their windows, wondering like, wow, this is, who needs Netflix or YouTube? This is action right here. Or they're wondering like, there's a gang beatdown. No, just joking. You know what I mean? Because it looked pretty serious. But overall, in terms of all the videos you've done, which one would you say was the most challenging one? And I'll let you define challenging and why was it challenging?
Um, I mean, that 2 versus 1 was very, very tiring. Fighting two guys at once, I do not recommend. It's
Mm.
very tough. Um, I don't think any of my videos are challenging. I think they're all very fun. I really enjoy doing it. Like I get excited to go into a sparring. Like I'll have a video in mind and I'll go into a sparring session like super excited and my goal is like I gotta land this cartwheel kick or I gotta land this spinning back fist and like I have a goal in mind and it just makes things really fun and challenging but fun.
Now, where do you see yourself? I know that this is that annoying question, but where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I don't know if it's 5 years or not, but I do want to open my own gym one day.
Uh,
Um, I want
will
to.
it be an online virtual gym, or would it actually be like a physical brick and mortar sort of gym?
I haven't decided yet. To be honest, right now it's doing very well online, and I'd like to keep it online. But I do like teaching in person more. Like as much as I love making content, I still love teaching online, and I think it's the most effective way of teaching someone. Maybe both. I really don't know. Um, I want to continue building my reputation as an online coach, as a coach in general, and to just help and inspire as many people out there as I can.
Would you, in terms of tapping into different audiences, in like different languages, are you interested in exploring different languages? As far as, obviously, English is a global language, no question about it. It's spoken everywhere. But what other sort of tactics or overall strategies would you consider as far as tapping maybe deeper into a particular audience? I
I've
guess
had,
language acquisition is that on the agenda?
you know what, I've had many requests to do, Spanish subtitles, French subtitles, German subtitles, Chinese subtitles, and I've all been open to it, but I just don't have that skill. And I've had people offer like, "Hey, I'll edit your videos and add it," and I gave them all chances, and they all kind of flopped on me.
Oh,
So it's a lot of work to do. Uh, so I don't know yet.
yeah, no, it's I could imagine it's obviously a lot of work, subtitling and all that. But I think now with this, you're in Singapore and you're not in Singapore at the moment, but you fight for a brand that operates predominantly out of Singapore, and that's a global economic hub with people from all over the world. And I would imagine you might be able to make some I don't know, I'm speculating, but some networking as far as looking into subtitling services and so on. Last two questions for you. I really appreciate your time. I know it's late on a Sunday. What key advice would you share as far as training advice to any current aspiring mixed martial arts fighter? What key advice would you share to them?
I would say consistent training. Like I know that's such a general, vague tip, but be consistent with your training. Um, Listen to your coach and be very open-minded to your training. Um, there are so many, like whenever I teach, I'll always, like for example, I'll have guys who come and I teach them how to throw a roundhouse kick, for example. And there's a snap kick and there's a Muay Thai kick. And they'll, most people don't know how to throw a roundhouse kick and kick through the body. They end up snapping halfway. But I'll always tell them that kick is not wrong. It's just different. And I really preach the whole, what you're doing is not wrong. It's just different. And there's so many styles. And just because I do it one way doesn't mean you have to. And you just got to be open-minded, because MMA is such a multi-dimensional sport. And there's so many ways of doing things. People used to look down on guys who fight with their hands down, but now it's so popular and it's so effective. People didn't like low kicks. Now everyone's throwing low kicks and calf kicks. So there's just so many different ways of training and different approaches to MMA that you got to keep open-minded.
Now, as far as last question here, marketing advice to any aspiring or current MMA fighter, what would that be? Oh, and another thing, you mentioned consistency as far as training, and the content you put out generally is very consistent. So I guess two questions. First one will be, how do you keep that flow of content, on all platforms going out? Like, how do you maintain that consistency there? So that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I used to worry about running out of content, but now I have a new approach of making content. I film almost every sparring session, and if I don't film a sparring session, I'm almost like unmotivated. But anyways, I film a sparring session, and I either have a goal, and I'm trying to land certain techniques that I have already planned, or I'm just sparring and being myself. And because I'm a martial artist and I'm always trying to learn and get better and try new things, I'll do things naturally without me consciously thinking of what I'm doing. And then later on, when I break down those videos and watching my sparring, I'm like, oh, I did this, or oh, I land this. And then I come up with another idea. So say like I'm sparring and I'm in a heated exchange with Fred or something, and I like slipped his punch and then kicked him in the leg, followed by the head or something, or I do some crazy combo. I'm like, oh, that's a good combo that I've never seen before, and I did it. And then I'll go into the next sparring session trying that same combination, and then if I can land it, then there you go, I have another video.
Interesting. And as far as marketing advice, what advice would you give to any aspiring or current MMA fighter?
Be consistent and be genuine. I try to be as genuine as possible. Like I said, I'm not posting my sparring videos to show that I'm the best, because I'm clearly getting hit more than I'm hitting the other guy. Just be real, be genuine. I didn't start this channel, or I'm not continuing this channel because I'm trying to show others that I'm beating up Fred Stonehouse. I'm here to help others, and I'm here to show others that you need to lose and suck and get hit to get better. So that kind of ties in with being genuine. And I have received a lot of feedback about that. People have been telling me that I'm genuine and humble, and they can trust me.
Man, that's incredible, man. That's a real vote of confidence, in terms of from your audience when they see the value of just a lifelong martial artist who's sharing his passion openly and transparently. I think that's brilliant. I really appreciate your time, Jeff, and all the best to you in 2021. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great chat.